race fans, Ryan Eho here, and the one and only Bert Lehman, bringing you a brand new show, which was part of the old show, and it's going to be called A Blast to the Past, brought to you by the folks here at the One to Go Show. We're going to separate this out. We both love racing history. Puka does too, so he'll join us once in a while. We're going to do some fun stuff with this, and this week it's just going to be Bert and I. Hope that's enough for you, but over time, we might maybe bring in a guest maybe that corresponds with that number. We might do some pretty neat things. But episode number 174 this week for the One to Go Show. And before we get started, a quick shout out, Impact Health Sharing. If you or anybody that you know is paying for their own healthcare and they're paying too much, I might have a great alternative for you. Shoot me a message, shoot me a text, 218-969-1380. See if we can save you some money on your healthcare costs. That way you have more money to spend on dirt track racing, because that's a heck of a lot more fun. So, episode 174, Bert. I got a couple trivia questions in here. I'm going to see if I can stump Bert Lehman, stump the late model guy. We'll see if we can do that.
It won't take much to stump me.
So, let's do this. So, I'm going to let you start. We're going to kind of alternate back and forth. And fans, what we do on this show is it's 174. So a race car driver with the number 74 in it. Could be 174, 74. We're going to bring up some drivers from the past, not typically current racers, but ones from the past. And we're going to talk a little bit about them, maybe show some pictures. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel or on Facebook, you'll be able to see some of the pictures that we post on here. And if you, the fans, right, ever have somebody like, hey, here's a driver for you, talk about this guy. Send us some of that stuff over. If you have a favorite story that corresponds with that driver, that would be fantastic. Get that to us. And we just love that. We like taking a look back. There's a lot of racing going on, current events, but we like to take a look back at some of the drivers that really paved the way and kind of give them their due. And I'll give a little shout out to my buddy Bert, Lauren Inman, good friend of mine from up in Proctor. This was kind of his idea. He's like, why don't you separate this out? Because he loves racing history too. And he's been a great contributor pretty much every week, sending me pictures, little stories, stuff like that. He loves this nostalgia as well. So we're going to give this a go for my buddy Lauren. So, Bert, age before beauty. We're going to let you go first. I don't know who's coming after you because it's certainly not the beauty. But well, let's get started. Who do you got?
The first one I have is you probably wouldn't get this one. Is Brian Brushert. He lives in the Kewanee area, which is kind of near Door County area. But he's best known for racing a number 5. But at the end of his racing career, before he retired, he raced the number 74 for at least one season, which he dubbed the Orange Crush car. It was an orange car with the number 74. And it was a tribute to, I don't know if it was one of his family members. I did a story about it, actually, but I can't remember exactly who the tribute was for. But it was... like I said, he was normally known for number 5, but at least one season towards the end of his career, he raced number 74.
Awesome. And he raced what, at Shawano? Is that where he typically raced?
He did race at Shawano for a period of time. He actually is a track champion in the IMCA stock car division at Shawano Speedway. But he also raced at Luxembourg Speedway and Seymour Speedway, and I'm sure he raced up in Sturgeon Bay also some. When he raced the number 74, though, that's when he was racing a sport mod.
Okay. Well, super cool. So I'm going to jump over to the Great Northwest, right? Northwest Minnesota, that is. Not necessarily the Great Northwest, but Northwest. And a guy that I raced against back in, this is dating us a little bit. My early years in super stock racing, 92, 93, there was a gentleman from over that direction. His name was Gary Nelson. And he's still with us, but he ran a super stock, and he kind of Bemidji, and it still is. It's a grassroots track. And we all kind of had like super stocks, and he had a Monte Carlo. It was looked more like a street stock, and it was a little heavier too. But the guy could flat out wheel a race car, and it said "Walleye Runner" across the back, and it had, you know, just a distinct look to it with the lettering. You know, somebody from the Bemidji area kind of had their own little flair to how they lettered it. But Gary Nelson, a guy that I raced against for a handful of years, I know he actually won some championships as well. But then Bert, his kids both started a race. And I'm going to start with Gary Nelson Jr., who transitioned. And I don't know if he's racing anymore. I don't believe he is. But he transitioned into the super stock class as well. Very competitive. You know, he won some races over in that direction, came over, had a few shows kind of in the Rapids, Hibbing area, mostly Bemidji, kind of that western Minnesota. But Gary Nelson Jr. Ran very well in a super. And now Gary James Nelson is also racing. He's in a Midwest mod. And Bert, this cat's fast. He's legit fast. I watched some races over in Bemidji. He's actually came over. He's at a special in Superior. And he wins a handful of shows every year. So just a great legacy. Three drivers from that same Nelson family. There could be more. So if you're watching this and you happen to know of more drivers tied to them, you know, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear more about them. So Gary Nelson and his kids from over in the Bemidji area. Who do you got,
All
Bert?
right. My next one, the name might be familiar to you. I mean, he was a very, very good dirt late model driver. His home track was down at the old Hales Corner Speedway, which is no longer there. He drove, this was a car when he drove for Bill Baling, who owns Baling Racing Equipment, who owned Baling Racing Equipment down in the Milwaukee area. Mike Mulius.
I remember him as a different number. Was he
Well,
a 10 or 11 or something? One. Was he number one? Did he have a number one?
He was number one at one time. Well, actually, Hales Corners, they did something where if you won the track championship, you were number one the following year.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So he did race number one, but when he raced for Bill Baling, he was number 74.
Okay. And I remember, yeah, because Scott Duvall, who I raced for, he had because I think Bill Baling passed.
Yes.
And I if I remember correctly, there was a 74 in memory of Bill Baling inside of Scott Duvall's modified when I drove it. So
that would be why.
Okay, there you go. So that's pretty cool. So tell me more about that Hales Corners. And that was dirt late models? Is that what you're talking, or was it for all their classes?
I'm not sure if it was all their classes, but that was and I don't know how long they did it, but I interviewed Whitey Ford, the Yankees pitcher. Whitey Harris.
Like, yeah, he's in racing too. No kidding.
I interviewed Whitey Harris, who he actually lives in Illinois, but he raced a lot at Hales Corners, and he was number one also down in Hales Corners. And they had that deal where if you won the championship, then you were number one the following year.
Yeah, I mean, that's common in a lot of other forms of motorsports, or in even like BMX and stuff like that. I mean, you got the one on your bike. I remember, you ever watched the movie Rad? It's old. It's like from the 80s, 90s. It's a BMX. My sister and I watched that movie probably, I don't know, 50 times. And the guy, there's a guy and a gal in it. They're both young, and he's like, so the number one, she's like, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. I'm just saying, right? And so that's kind of a cool deal. I've never heard that in dirt track racing. So it's kind of a fun little tidbit from Hales Corners. So I'm going to jump into the sprint car world here. And actually, in this particular situation, it's going to be the smart cars. I don't know a lot about them. I look back at some pictures. I got a picture on here if you're watching on YouTube. Do you remember the smart cars? It was S.M. I don't even know what it stood for, but it was kind of looked like a vintage car, older modified, wing on top, totally distinct look. But Leigh Thomas, a driver that normally we know in our area as the number 29 in the sprint car world, and he's from Proctor. My buddy Lauren sent me this picture, and he said, as a kid, I'd ride my bike over to look at that car, and I don't know a lot about it. I don't know where he raced it, but he had a number 74 smart car. And Inman's Auto Repair actually sponsored Leigh's sprint car, and from Proctor, and I don't think he's getting after it anymore, but Leigh Thomas raced for quite a while. Interesting character. He had the long curly hair. I mean, he had sprint car driver Bert written all over him. I mean, he was definitely, the prototypical sprint car guy. So thanks, Lauren, for that. Who do you have next?
The next driver I have also raced for Bill Baling, late model driver. He also raced the number one on many years, because he was probably the most prolific late model driver from that raced at Hales Corner Speedway.
Give me another clue.
He passed a few years ago, and Plymouth Speedway the last few years they've had a memorial race for him.
First name.
Well, let me give you some other clues.
Okay.
There's a current driver, late model driver from Southeast Wisconsin, who would be his nephew. And I believe Mitch McGrath would be his nephew also.
I was just gonna say, now I know who you're talking about. Dang it. Name's right on the tip of my tongue too. I know that, and they've had memorial races for him. His kid's not his grandkid's not number 74. He's like is he 10?
Taylor Scheffler would be number 10.
That's his grandkid, right?
That would be his nephew, I believe.
Oh, that's his nephew. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was on the right track. At least I remember the right number.
You're probably thinking of George.
Okay. Is it Bill Scheffler? Is that
Russ
Scheffler? Okay. And I don't know a lot of. I've heard the name because of the memorial race. I don't know a lot of history on him. But Russ Scheffler, where was he from, Bert?
He was down from the Waukesha area, which is down by Milwaukee. I think he has at least 13 track championships at Hales Corner Speedway. I mean, he was just dominant down there. It's unfortunately Hales Corners is now a Home Depot parking lot.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is there anything there from the track at all, or is everything completely gone?
My assumption would be everything's completely gone. The land was just worth too much money.
Why don't you see? I mean, hopefully you can find them. But why don't you find a couple pictures of the old Hales Corners online? Send them over to Mason. Shout out Mason Aaron's videos. Does a lot for us as far as editing, and he does a lot of great content. Does a lot for the sport. But shoot a couple Hales Corners pictures over to Mason that he can put up on here, because that's a track right there, Bert, that I've heard a lot about, never been there. I quite honestly haven't been to, I don't think, any of the what I would consider Eastern Wisconsin racetracks. I think we need to change that. I think I need to change that.
Yeah, I was only to Hales Corners once. MJ raced there at a year-end special one year. Well, we went a different time. I went tagged along and it got rained out, so we wound up in a bar down in the Milwaukee area because the races got rained out.
Racers at a bar. Huh, that never seems to happen.
But we raced in a year-end special, and the way they did time trials was just totally new to me, because they had a set amount of time that for time trials for late models. So you could get as many qualifying laps as you wanted in that time period. So once a driver finished qualifying, they get right back in line to qualify again. Any changes you made to the car, you would do it while you were waiting in line to go out and qualify again.
Really?
Yeah.
That wow. See, I'd be good at that kind of qualifying, because I could always maybe get dialed in a little bit better. And so you literally have an allotted amount of time, and you can take as many qualifying laps as you wanted to, is really how it worked. And
yeah,
as long as it was in that window, and they took your best one.
Yeah, you had if they allotted like 20 minutes for qualifying, so all the cars would go out take their turn qualifying, and then you get right back in line. And I believe you could do that as many times as you wanted, as long as it was within that time frame.
Interesting. Boy, I bet that drive the track out quick, fast, and hurry. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. So thanks for that. Let's jump on another Duluth guy. He doesn't live in Duluth anymore. Now he's in central Minnesota, but Jeff Leon. So Jeff Leon is running everything from street stocks to super stocks to modifieds to late models. I mean, he's sponsored cars. And now his boys both run. Jeffrey Leon Jr. and Jace Leon, both of them race, and both of them have won races. But his first car, Bert, he bought this in 1988. There's a driver by the name of Starter LePage. It was Todd LePage. And Starter is actually one of Billy Nelson's kids, Daryl Nelson. So yep. Starter is, I think, like a half brother, something along those lines. They're all tied in. But Starter sold this car to him. I think it was a Chevelle. There's a picture. I feel like a Putz. I should know what this car is. I'm pretty sure it's a Chevelle. But Lauren sent this picture over. So this would be considered a street stock, right? 1988. He bought this car pretty much race ready. What do you think he paid for that car to go racing? First time racer, like, hey, I want to start doing this, right? I'm gonna go buy a car. I'm gonna go out there and race. What do you suppose he paid for that car in 1988, ready to go?
$1,000.
$200, he said. $200. So I paid a little bit more for my first car, Bert. So in 1990, Gary Toon and we decided, hey, we're going to get into racing. My dad raced for years. I knew I wanted to race at an early age. Never had any money. I was 15 years old. I was broke. I didn't have any money. And my dad's like, if you're going to race, you're paying for it. Got my own car. Kind of didn't want me to race, right? Because he knew it was going to take every dollar I ever had. But he's like, hey, if you do it, I'll support you. So me and Gary Toon went halves on a car. What do you think we paid combined for our first car in 1990?
$1,500.
$600. $600. And it came with a parts car. It came with all kinds of stuff. Big old boat, big old Impala. And Billy Matzdorf, who's in the Hall of Fame up at the Grand Rapids Speedway, it was his car prior. Let's just say he was a little quicker in that car than Gary and I were, but we had a hell of a lot of fun. And Bert, let's be honest. I mean, that's what's hurting in the sport today. If fans bring their kids to the track and their kids are like, man, I want to go racing, right? I want to start doing this. I would have a hard time saying you could get into a car for, and I'm talking dirt cheap, right? $4 or $5 grand to get into a Hornet or something like that, or a pure stock. I know people that got 10 grand into both of those, both Hornets and pure stocks, and that's a starter class. Things have definitely changed, and I don't have the answers. I really don't. As far as like what would be a great starter class, I think it would be great to see something that was affordable under $1,000. But man, it seems like them days are long, long gone. So $200 he paid for this car, just absolutely crazy. Went on to win a bunch of races, and now both of his kids racing. He's still heavily involved. So Jeff Leon, who do you got next?
The final one that I have, dirt late model driver. We've talked about him under 2 other numbers on this list, and he's from Wisconsin and eastern Wisconsin, and he's in the National Dirt Late Model Hall of Fame.
Well, that wouldn't be Scheffler?
No.
He's not in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame or not, but that's not the driver I'm.
MJ?
No.
Pete Parker?
Yes.
Really?
At the end of Pete's racing career, he raced a Wild chassis, which was made by the Schefflers. So he just raced one of the 74 cars that Schefflers had. So
okay.
So
there's a former national champion in Wissota.
Yeah.
And is reliable trailers still a thing over there? Do they still build those trailers?
I'm not
Or
sure.
Reliable Welding, maybe it was.
Reliable Welding was the name of it. Yeah, I'm not sure if they still build trailers or not.
Man,
But yeah, those things are all over the place.
I'm talking, back in the day, now everybody's got enclosed trailers, right? But
Right.
back in the day, everybody's like, I want a Parker trailer, right? They didn't call them Reliable, they called them Parker trailers.
Right.
And for you new folks that are watching, they were the kind of a ramp over type deal trailer with like a who knows how many rows of tire racks. I've seen them as many, like 6 rows on there. But they had the big boxes on them and all decked out. As far as open trailers went, those things were sexy. I used to sit in class in school, Bert, and draw pictures of race cars. And then after I remember, I'm guessing MJ's was he had one of those for a while, and then he went to the enclosed, right?
Yeah, MJ was probably the first driver in this area to get an enclosed trailer. He had an enclosed trailer in the mid 80s already.
I remember him coming to Hibbing. I think he had did he have just a cube van pulling it, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it was pretty sweet looking.
Yeah, it was red and white, and then the trailer was white and red, when it had MJ McBride on the side of it. And
yeah, he was pretty decked out, and Parker was too. Them Parker trailers were pretty awesome.
Well, so the thing about Pete too, about talking about trailers, even when enclosed trailers became the in thing, Pete still had the open trailer. He did have an enclosed trailer late in his career, but even when enclosed trailers were the thing, he still used that open trailer.
Right. And they were nice, though. It wasn't just a regular open flatbed trailer. These things were absolutely badass looking. So I'm going to jump down to southern Minnesota, Bert. See if maybe I can stump you here. Okay. Huge legacy. Okay. This gentleman raced. His kid raced in the mod and late model division. Very successful, right? His grandkid is now racing. His kid actually built a career, right? I think he does more. I think he has a painting business too, but they have Action Engineering, where they built chassis, they built engines, right? That's his kid. This guy here was sponsored by Elmer's Auto. Okay, Elmer's Auto, which was Duhlman, right? Elmer Duhlman. It was a junkyard. Les Duhlman, his dad, it would have been, that sponsored this guy. Very meticulous looking stuff. Let's see, what else can I give you for clues here? Les Duhlman built his first race car at this guy's shop. And at 15 years old, Les went on to win Rookie of the Year honors in the late models at the Tri-Oval Speedway in Fountain City, which is now the Mississippi Thunder Speedway. At 16 years old, he beat, people like Lance Matthews and, some of them guys to win his first track championship. This guy won a lot of races in the area, helped a lot of people, lots of people. First class operation, very meticulous. His son works I think he's going to college at Stout, or did, but he's also working at MB. That's his grandson, excuse me. His grandson went on to win the 2022 US MTS National Championship. And is now piloting the AMD house car.
I don't know his first name, but Sorensen.
Yeah. So Justin is the grandkid. Mike, of course, is his dad. But Dick Sorensen, he ran a 74 car, and I had some, quite honestly, Bert, I knew so little about this guy, because back when I was growing up, they didn't have, you couldn't jump online to see what people were doing. There was no My Race Pass. I was at the Punky Manor, and I took a picture of this guy's car. I believe it was probably on a Parker trailer, by the way. And it was immaculate. Thing was beautiful, right? I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. No clue. And literally, it took me like years later to realize, wait a second, Dick Sorensen is who this guy was. So,
and the only reason I knew that much was because Dustin raced a throwback scheme a couple of years ago and was number 74.
he sure did. He sure did. So I talked to Les Duhlman. Les Duhlman actually owns Dirt Dueler Chassis. Very sharp individual, great racer. His kid's a great racer. And he spoke very highly of Dick Sorensen. He said, he really helped him get his racing career underway. Literally taught him the right way of doing things. First class guy, just a very, very good operation. And now he's got a kid that was very successful. And I believe Mike Sorensen is part owner, Bert, of the Deer Creek Speedway now. I think that happened last year where he went in with Cole Queensland, and he's part owner of Deer Creek down there. So that family, huge racing legacy, huge family in racing. They've done a lot for the sport, continue to do so. And keep an eye on Dustin Sorensen. We know the kid can drive. And how long before he translates into success in that 28 car? Do you think over and under there for Dustin Sorensen, 3 wins in the late model in 2023?
3 wins in any type of late model racing? I mean, local, WISSOTA, whatever.
I don't know if they're going to race WISSOTA.
Okay.
I think they're going to race like the local specials, that type of MLRA, maybe a little bit.
I'll take the under.
You're negative. So Dustin Sorensen fans, that's Bert Lehman. I'm just going to be the optimist here, right? I think that if they actually start to race, they haven't really raced much. The kid can drive.
Yeah.
With that group of people there, I'm gonna take the over, but not by much. I can see him maybe getting 4 wins if it's maybe not World of Outlaw, maybe not Lucas Oil, maybe not that, but maybe they end up going to some kind of more local, maybe like a Mars deal or MLRA, something like that. But boy, I'd like to see him get that thing in victory lane. Now we're going to jump into my favorite class, the WISSOTA Super Stock Division. You wouldn't know this guy, but Dave Shackleton, a guy from over by the Menominee area. Bert, this guy was a rocket ship for a long time. Mopar guy, ran 74. Big momentum guy, very, very good at primarily Red Cedar Speedway, but he was super fast when he showed up to the Cedar Lake Speedway as well, and lost his life a few years back. I think it was maybe cancer. I'm speculating there. I think it was, but I'm not positive on that. In the last few years, they've had a Dave Shackleton memorial over at the Red Cedar Speedway. My buddy Kevin Burdick won it a couple years ago. It was $5,074 to win that race. But Dave Shackleton, I talked to people like Danny Thomas, and they speak very highly of Dave Shackleton. He won a lot of races back in the day. So Godspeed to the old 74. Now, modified guy, Bert. This guy right here, a lot of IMC races. You do know. Yes. What do you got?
Is it Noble?
It is. Mark Noble, Blooming Prairie, Minnesota's finest. Over 600 feature wins. I think he still gets after a little bit. He was heavily involved. Steve Yagi, they have that racers reunion down in Rochester. Todd Narvison, Mark Noble, they're involved with kind of helping put that together. Read up a little bit on him. How did he get 74? Well, his dad was number 75. He started racing, competed against dad. He's like, well, we can't have the same number. So he went with 74. But if you look at some of his cars, there's a little 75 in the number, kind of commemorating his dad. That's kind of cool. Started in the street stock class, Bert, in 1973. So this would be his 51st year of going left around racetracks.
And actually, how I know the name is, I didn't know much about, before you said all of this stuff, I didn't even know all that. But as everybody knows, I collect racing diecasts, and they made a diecast of him and of his modified, and I bought that. That would have been the first modified diecast I ever bought. So
no kidding. Now you got it handy there. You got it.
No, I don't have it handy. It's boxed away until I can get some more display cases.
You got late models, modified hater. Again, that's Bert Lehman, modified hater. Fair enough. So another thing here on Mark Noble, I read up on it a little bit. And they said, Mark's known for win. He's won a lot of races. I mean, over 600 feature wins. I mean, come on, not many people have had a career like that. But the things that I read up on that said this guy here was not in where he raced. He was more known for the guy that would literally help anybody out at any time. Very approachable, super nice guy. And that got me back to thinking. So I went down with John Carpenter to East Bay for Speed Weeks in the modified back in, it would have been February of 09. It would have been after my first year in the modifieds. And we had ran Volusia. We went over to East Bay. I don't remember which one. I think we went to Volusia first. And we go to East Bay, and I ran the first night. And the next night, I'm out scaling the car, found a nice flat spot. And here comes Mark Noble walking up. I'm like, oh my God, it's Mark Noble. Like, I mean, the guy's famous in racing, especially in our area. Super nice guy. He came up and we talked for probably a good half hour, an hour. And, he gave me a couple pointers, and he wasn't racing down there, but he kind of helped me with a couple things. And lo and behold, I went out, parked it in Victory Lane that night, and he came down, congratulated me. And, I just thought it was super cool to be able to meet Mark Noble and then have him help me just a little bit, and then park it in Victory Lane. It just kind of tied it all together. So pretty good memories there of Mark Noble. And glad to see that he's not a quitter like me. He's still getting around the tracks a little bit. So here's a trivia question. Fans, like if you have a trivia question, you're like, hey, let's try to stump Bert Lehman, right? Let's try to, and the other way, Bert tried to stump me. He did, right? Well, it might not be necessarily a car number 74. Let's, in this instance, Bert, go back to the year 1974. I think you graduated then.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I was 3 years old.
So you're a couple years older than me.
I was going to races at that age.
Right. I was born in 74, by the way. That's a heck of a good year right there. So, all right. You're a World 100 guy. You've been to the World 100 a bunch of times. So we're going to go 1974. World 100 winner.
That was
a little side.
Wait, that was the first year that they had the World 100, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so, because when I read up on, I could be wrong, but what I read up on here is they had it in 73 and he didn't make the show.
Oh, okay.
So he did not make the show in 73, but he won it in 74.
Is it Inman?
Nope. Lauren Inman was not alive then. Just kidding. That was not Inman. So he had a little stint, Bert, where he went to work in the Cup world. In fact, in 1 year, he built 32 engines for Dave Marcus alone.
I don't know.
Quote, I quit the Cup world because it got too political. It's been based on way too much money and not enough talent. That's a quote of his.
Well, that rings true really today.
It does. This driver was born in Monona, Iowa.
When I hear the name, I'll know it.
As he progressed, when he got his racing career started, he actually raced out of Waterloo, Iowa.
Sanger.
I had one more clue. You got it. Ed Sanger. And he won the Ironman Invitational up at the Hibbing Raceway, my home track up in Hibbing, Minnesota. So yeah, you got it spot on. Ed Sanger, 1974 World 100 winner.
Do you have the rundown from that race?
I don't. I probably should have, but I don't have it.
I think that is the year that MJ finished 4th or 5th.
Okay. Yeah, see, you're gonna have to look that up. See if we can find that. Post it in the comments. So it's always fun to kind of look back. That's the 74s. Fans, if you have 74s that maybe we missed, or maybe you have some stories about some of the 74s we talked about. Maybe you have some pictures of your own that you'd like to share. Put those in the comments, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, whichever one you want to do, or just send them to us. We can post that stuff. And remember, next week is 175. So we're going to be doing 175 if we know any drivers, and 75. Got a few pretty good ones there for next week, Bert. But fans, we'd love to have your participation in here. We love this nostalgia. Hope you guys enjoyed this show, and make sure to tune into the actual our hallmark, right? The One to Go show. Make sure to tune into that as well. So as always, I'm Ryan Aho. That is the Bert Lehman. Thanks for tuning in to an episode of Blast to the Past.